All right. Okay, I'm just gonna let it warm up for just a moment and then I will get started. There we go. There we go. Okay, I just want to this is going to be pretty short, a short video, but I just want to just talk for just a moment about what is going on when we see our children struggling with the same thing that we struggled in childhood. This has actually come up for me in my own life, but it's also come up recently with a lot of parents, and so I just felt like it was time to be able to share this with you guys, with the group. And so when everybody has a childhood that is different things in it. So maybe you were bullied on the playground, maybe you were plagued with feeling shame and like something's wrong with you, you don't belong. Maybe it was suicide, maybe it was feeling separate. It doesn't matter, but everybody has their own childhood experiences. And when we begin to have our own children, you know, God is so good because He doesn't want us to have things that cause hurts or lies or offenses, and He doesn't want them to stay in us. He wants us to actually get them out and to be healed and to be freed from that. And so, what happens is a lot of times people have traumatic events, and come on, things that are traumatic to a child are not necessarily adult worthy of trauma, but it's a really big deal for a child, like say on the playground. And so what we do is we actually take that pain or we take that event and we put band-aids around it to be able to mask it or to pretend like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then sometimes we grow out of it and it no longer affects us directly, or maybe it's not something we deal with, but we've never dealt with what was going on underneath or what was like that original pain, so to speak. So we all of a sudden, we now have kids who are the same age and they are walking through the same thing that we did, and it's triggering all things in us. And it's not triggering our adult brain, and it's not triggering who we are today, but it's reminding us and triggering us of those places when we were younger. And so God absolutely, He's so good. He is such a perfect father, a perfect parent. What He does is He's giving you parents another opportunity to revisit some of those pains in childhood, not so that it hurts you, but so that you can be free from it once and for all. And things can come full circle, that Johnny does not dictate your identity, that Susie does not get to have the final say in your value, and coming full circle with that. So that's one thing. And I talk a lot about that with Let the Children Fly, with the different things that I do. But I actually want to move and talk about a whole another camp. If you've had something in your childhood and you know for a fact you've done the work, it feels peaceful, you've cleaned up the mess, of so to speak, you have overcome and you've had breakthrough in that, and now you see your children walking through the same thing, that's the camp I want to speak in. Okay, so let me explain it more in testimony form as far as how the Lord taught me. I have a particular daughter who's most not like me, and she's the one that will have a smile on her face and tears in her eyes, and she'll try to convince me, I'm fine, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, your tears in your eyes are telling me something different, so which one do you want to give a voice to? And this was, excuse me, I'm something in my eye. This was about 5 years ago, and we went for a family walk, and I just knew she was not okay, but I could not seem to pull on the rope and get to the bottom of it. And I finally looked at her and I said, sweetie, I think it's time that you give those tears a voice, and that you be honest with yourself, because it is a form of lying to say you're fine when your tears are communicating that you're not. So I said, I just think it's time that you be really brave and be honest about what's really going on inside of you. And she ended up saying these words to me. She said, Mom, she said, you're right. She said, I'm not okay. And she said, I have been hearing voices and having thoughts about harming myself, about suicide. And my world, we were outside on the driveway, my world completely stopped in that moment. And I said something to her like, I'm so proud of you for being honest and for giving your heart a voice. And I said, I will absolutely walk you through this, and this is not something that you need to carry alone. But I said, Mommy needs a few minutes with Jesus to be able to get my heart to hear from the Lord as far as how to best to help you. So I got my kids situated. So sorry about my phone here. I got my kids situated, and um, I got my kids situated, and I went into the back bedroom, and I called a grandma-like mentor friend who came over. I said, I'm in crisis, and I need you here like now. And she came over, and I am not exaggerating when I say I went through an entire box of Kleenex. Like, I could not get my tears and my snot out fast enough for all the pain that that hearing that my daughter was struggling with that caused my mom a heart. That is something that I've battled with my whole childhood. That is something that almost took me out. That is something that I know the language and the emotions and the thoughts so well. And the thought of my daughter struggling with this was just more than I could handle. And I just kept lamenting and just getting all this emotion out with this lady. And at the very end, she said these words to me, which at the time did not feel very good at all. But boy, the truth that this woman carried. And she said this to me. She said, do you really think that this is all about you? And she said, do you really honestly believe that all the breakthrough, all the freedom, all the victory that you have been walking in this area, the authority that you've used and how you've overcome this area, dealing with the lie of suicide. She said, do you honestly believe that none of that worked, that none of that was bearing fruit and effective? And I said, no, I do. But obviously, I opened up the door in order for the enemy to use it with my daughter. And she said, that's just nonsense. She said, that is nonsense. That is from the pit of hell, and that is a lie. She said, you are free, and you are set free. You are redeemed, and you have come full circle in that area. And she said, the enemy throws out those lies and those seeds. In my case, it was about just ending your life. With other children, it's about their worth and their value, that they don't belong, that there's something wrong with them, that they don't fit in, that nobody likes them. He's just throwing out those seeds to any child that is willing to bite the bait. And she said these super powerful words to me. She said, that those seeds worked in your life and they almost took you out, Lisa. And she said, but it didn't work, and you did overcome it. You did use the tools of heaven, and you gained victory in that area. She said, but just because you have freedom does not mean that your daughter doesn't have her own journey. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have an enemy too. And she simply is at the same crossroads or threshold that you were. And because of your family dynamics, you went this way with that battle, but she's going to take another road or have another path or journey with that. And she also highlighted to me, as she said, you have so many tools now for this area and with this theme that you get to pass on to your daughter to help her fight and help her work through that, to build her testimony with that. And lastly, she reminded me, as she said, your daughter has thoughts about it, and those thoughts are not her own. And just because she has a thought does not mean she's actually battling it. And this is the final punchline that I felt like I really needed to hear in that moment, that I feel like are such glorious keys for other parents. Is this lady said to me, she said, this whole thing with your daughter is more about the enemy getting you to repartner with it out of fear so that you open up the door over your child in this area. Let me explain what this means. If I have a history with suicide and I know how deep and wide and painful and how serious that is, and I've overcome it, and now my daughter is saying, hey, I've heard those thoughts too, and I get all worked up, and I go through a box of Kleenex crying, I'm so emotional about it, and I get all worked up and fearful about, oh, my daughter can't struggle that way, and I'm fearing that. I'm actually the one that is opening up the door with the fear of suicide that welcomes it back in to actually influence my child. And let me tell you, when she said those words, I dried my tears, told her she was done, she could leave. It was probably like 11 o'clock at night at this time. Told her I was done, I was feeling better, dried my tears, and I rose up like a mother, like a mama bear. I rose up and I used my parental authority over the spirit of suicide, that it would not affect my child, that it would not harass my child, that it would not influence my daughter. And when she woke up the next day, we walked through what it looked like to hear those thoughts, to take them captive, and then use the tools of heaven and what to do with them. So I just want to encourage you, whatever it is that's your journey that you've been through, that your child is now dealing with, the first thing is I would just really kind of feel around that suicide is never going to feel good to me, but I can be at peace because God has brought healing. It doesn't trigger me anymore. So the first thing I just would encourage you to do is God allowing something to happen in your home with your child for your greater healing? That's a gift. That's not something to bow down to. It's not something to shrink away from. That is a gift for your greater healing. So I would track with that first. The second thing, if you're like, no, it doesn't feel good, but there's peace in that, and I know that I've overcome this. It's just making me super concerned that my child is struggling with it. I would switch, and I would rise up in your authority over the thing that you've already defeated, and from that place, give your child keys and solutions that you needed when you were a child that perhaps you didn't get. There are keys and solutions to identity, to not belonging, to feeling like something is wrong with them, to not being included with friends, to the list is endless that the enemy uses, right? He actually only uses, he has the same targets, our worth, our value, our identity. He just spins them around in different ways. But anyways, there's keys and solutions to your child. So I hope that encourages you to position yourself differently with whatever it is that your child is going through. All right? Be blessed by that. If you have questions, please message me with them, and I'll be sure that I respond to them. All right? Thanks, guys.